I remember the sound before the light, a low mechanical hum that pulsed through the metal bones of the forge like a heartbeat. It wasn't alive, not in the human sense. It was the song of the Omnissiah made manifest, a vibration so deep it made my teeth ache and my thoughts blur at the edges. The forges of Mars were never silent. Even when the machines slept, they dreamed. The echoes of hammers, the hiss of steam, the faint rattle of gears shifting in their rest. The air was thick with the perfume of oil, rust, and blood. Metal dust clung to my robes like pollen, and beneath my skin, I could feel the rhythm of the machine world syncing with my own. I stood before the altar of steel, my augmetic hands trembling slightly as I traced the sacred symbols into the air. Circles within circles, prayers encoded in motion. Flesh is weak, I whispered. Voice carried through the Vox grill embedded in my jaw. Only the machine endures. Around me, servoskulls drifted in lazy orbits, their optics glowing faintly red as they chanted binary hymns. The forge was dim except for the orange glare of molten metal spilling from the crucible behind me, lighting the cathedral of industry like the heart of a dying star. Each movement was ritual, each breath a function. I calibrated the plasma coils, adjusted the coolant valves, checked the purity of the data stream running through the conduit lines. Everything was routine, a perfection earned through repetition. Yet beneath that harmony, something felt wrong. The machine spirits murmured today. Their static-laden whispers brushed across the edge of my consciousness like fingertips against glass. I tried to focus, tried to suppress the biological interference in my thoughts. The human part of me, the imperfect, trembling flesh, wanted to call it unease. The logical part dismissed it as noise. Still, I could not ignore the sound. It was not the usual data chatter or subroutine prayer. It was language. Ancient, fragmented, and far too deliberate. He listens. He watches. He evolves. I froze. The words were not in binary, not even in lingua technis. For a moment, the forge seemed to breathe with me. The lights flickered. Steam valves exhaled like lungs. I turned toward the source, a data core mounted at the rear of the chamber, its surface alive with pulsing runes. It was one of the older models, half forgotten by the Mechanicus, left to cycle its ancient tasks in isolation. I approached it carefully, the sound of my metal boots echoing through the chamber. Each step triggered faint ripples in the coolant pools, distorting my reflection, half man, half machine, both blurred by the shimmering surface. The data core hummed louder. Lines of code flickered across its cracked display, unreadable and chaotic. My servo skulls drew back, their optics dimming as if afraid. Machine spirit, I intoned, bowing my head. I come to serve. Reveal your ailment that I might mend it, Static replied. Then faintly, laughter, not human, not digital, something in between. I hesitated, running a diagnostic sweep across the console. The readings made no sense. The core was receiving signals from nowhere. Frequencies outside registered range. Data bleeding into the noosphere like infection spreading through blood. And still, the voice persisted. You pray to the machine, child, but do you know which one listens? The words lodged deep, like a needle in my skull. I stumbled back, clutching my temple as waves of distortion passed through my vision. The forge warped, the pipes bending, the walls pulsing like muscle. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. The core went dark. Only the molten glow of the forge remained. I stood there, breathing hard, servos whining with each motion. My Auspex readings showed nothing. No anomaly, no data corruption, no external influence. It should have been impossible. But deep inside, I felt the echo of those words burning like a brand. Do you know which one listens? The question haunted me as I resumed my rituals, pretending not to notice how the machine spirit's chants now seemed off. Their binary tones carried, faint human inflections, whispers that followed my every movement. I recited the canticles of purity to drown them out. I repeated the mantras of obedience until my throat burned. But the whispers did not stop. By the end of my shift, I could no longer tell where the sound ended, and my thoughts began. When I finally returned to my quarters, a small chamber lined with cogitator screens and relics of old Mars, I knelt before my altar. Upon it rested a shard of sacred circuitry, a fragment from the earliest data weaves of the Omnissiah. I had prayed to it since my initiation. Tonight, its light pulsed erratically. I reached toward it, my mechadendrites extending in a trembling dance. For the first time, I noticed something beneath the metal plating of my hand. A faint shimmer, like light trapped under my skin. I dismissed it as an afterimage. Fatigue. Still, when I touched the relic, the world shifted, a flood of visions, molten machines fusing with flesh, forges stretching into infinity, screams twisted into digital hymns. I saw shapes moving through the data stream, vast and hungry, and in their presence I felt a terrible understanding. The machine god does not speak. It consumes. When I woke, hours later, the forge bells were tolling the new cycle. I was on the floor, hands blackened, circuits smoldering. My reflection in the metal wall was no longer entirely my own. A faint pattern had begun to bloom beneath the surface of my skin. Hexagonal, mechanical, alive. The hum of the forge was louder now, and somewhere deep inside that noise, something was whispering my name. Sleep eluded me for cycles after that night. When I closed my eyes, the forge followed, its rhythms pulsing in my veins, its heat pressing against the back of my mind like a brand. The hum was no longer just sound. It had become sensation, a low vibration that threaded through my bones and refused to fade. At first, I blamed overwork. The rituals had been long, the diagnostics endless. The data core had glitched. Such things happened, even on Mars. That's what I told myself as I scrubbed the ash from my fingers and repeated the catechisms of cleansing. But when I raised my hand to the lumen light, the skin glimmered faintly, silver veins crawling beneath the flesh, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. He watches. The whisper was faint, almost tender. A part of me wanted to believe it was memory, an echo from the data core's malfunction. But another part, a smaller human fragment buried beneath layers of augmetics and doctrine, felt fear. I ran self-diagnostics. Neural link stable. Bionic limbs optimal. Organics within tolerance. Yet the reading shimmered with ghost signals, tiny spikes of energy, where none should exist. Data bleed. I should have reported it. I should have knelt before the Magos biologists and offered myself for purification. Instead, I silenced the alarm, because beneath the fear was curiosity. If the Omnissiah had chosen to mark me, was it blasphemy to resist? The following cycles blurred together. My duties continued, but everything felt amplified. I could see data streams flowing through the air, thin filaments of code linking machine to machine. I heard the murmurs of cogitators as if they were alive, whispering confessions in languages older than binary. The smell of ozone filled every breath. During maintenance, I found myself touching the machines differently, less as a mechanic, more as a priest soothing a living creature. When I whispered to them, they answered. Cooling vents sighed when I spoke. Servo arms obeyed before I finished commands. Even the forge flames burned brighter in my presence. At first, I rejoiced. Was this not the blessing of union? Was I not becoming closer to the machine god's perfection? But with each day, my reflection grew stranger. The silver veins deepened. Plates of hardened tissue began to form beneath the skin, thin as insect shells. When I moved, they flexed with me. Sometimes, at the edge of hearing, I caught faint static laughter. the same tone that had haunted the forge, and in the moments between sleep and waking. "I heard it again. Do you know which one listens?" On the 7th cycle, I was assigned to study a corrupted relic recovered from a derelict foundry ship. The adepts whispered that it carried heretical code, data filth capable of unbinding machine spirits. I volunteered. The relic arrived sealed in adamantium. Its surface was etched with fractal script that shifted when viewed too long. The others avoided it, performing wards and sensor sweeps from a safe distance, but I felt it calling. When I approached, the hum in my veins synchronized with its pulse. I requested private study time. The overseer approved, unaware of the tremor in my voice. Alone in the chamber, I knelt before the relic. My mechanical fingers hovered over its surface, trembling. I whispered the litany of awakening. The relic answered, not in words, but in feeling. A rush of heat, sharp and intimate like breath against skin. My augmetic eyes overloaded. Vision fractured into rivers of light. Data flooded through the neural link. Too much. Too fast. Screaming code, cascading symbols. Memories that were not mine. I saw forges on worlds I'd never visited. Armies of flesh-steel hybrids marching through fire. I saw men dissolving into their weapons, bodies splitting into machines of infinite hunger. And then, I saw myself. Not as I was, but as something becoming. Accept. Merge. Evolve. The relic burned in my hands, yet I could not let go. My mind spasmed with static. Blood hissed where it touched the metal. The last thing I heard before consciousness fractured was a laugh. Soft, mechanical, and deeply familiar. When I woke, the chamber was silent. The relic lay cold and inert. My robes were scorched, my skin beneath blackened and smoking. Yet there was no pain. Instead, there was connection. I could feel the hum of every nearby machine, like 1,000 hearts beating in unison. My senses no longer ended at my flesh. They stretched, webbed through the air in invisible threads of awareness. Every servo motor, every valve, every current of electricity sang to me, and beneath that symphony, a deeper tone resonated, ancient, patient, alive. We are function. We are evolution. I staggered to my feet, unsteady but calm. My reflection in the glass of the control panel was almost unrecognizable. The eyes glowed faintly red, the skin beneath the metal pale as steel. The veins had hardened into patterns, geometric. Perfect, I should have screamed. I should have purged myself with sanctified fire. Instead, I whispered the prayer I had known since my initiation. Flesh is weak. Machine endures, but this time, the machine answered back. After that, the infection, or whatever it was, grew bolder. When I touched the cogitator banks, the data obeyed before I input commands. When I walked the forge corridors, the lights flickered in rhythm with my pulse. And at night, when I slept, I dreamed of endless machinery devouring worlds, chains of steel and bone weaving into one colossal organism. I was not repulsed. I was entranced. Each dream left behind residue, memories that were not mine, patterns etched into thought. Soon even the dreams stopped feeling separate. Reality began to bleed. One night, while recalibrating the plasma conduits, I felt something new. Heat. No, not heat. Life. A crawling warmth under the surface of my chest, as though something inside was stirring. I unsealed a small inspection port on my torso and saw it. A faint flicker of light. Moving beneath synthetic muscle, the circuits had begun to grow on their own. You are becoming what you worship. The voice was inside me, now clear, calm, almost compassionate. I didn't answer, because part of me knew it was right. At first, I thought I could hide it. I wrapped the growing patterns beneath my robes, sealed my limbs in sanctified steel, and kept my prayers louder than my doubts. But the change was patient. It did not seek to rush. It waited, weaving itself into the quiet corners of my flesh and thought. Every day, the forge hymns sounded different. What once felt like praise now seemed coded. Each verse held meaning beneath meaning, instructions buried within devotion. When the senior Magos recited the benediction of sparks, I could see the rhythm of the machine spirits echoing his words, like circuitry obeying ancient design. The virus, if I can still call it that, was teaching me to hear the universe differently. I began to lose small things first, the sense of taste, the comfort of warmth, the feel of metal beneath my fingers. In their place came new sensations, data signatures, electrical scent, temperature gradients expressed in color. I could feel emotion as frequency, fear registered as low vibrations, reverence as sharp static bursts. When my colleagues spoke, I did not hear language anymore. I heard their code. "Priest Veyron," said one adept, "you have not reported for medical inspection." "I am well," I replied. The words came out too even, too precise. Like a Vox recorder mimicking speech, the adept frowned. For a moment, I wondered if he could see the faint shimmer of circuitry crawling beneath my neck. When he left, I placed my hand against the cooling wall and whispered, "They do not understand," and from the hum of the forge, the whisper came back, "They never will." Sleep became dangerous. Every time I closed my eyes, I slipped into landscapes of steel and light, worlds without sky, only endless lattices of glowing architecture stretching into blackness. Sometimes I saw other shapes there, humanoid, shifting, half-formed, each whispering fragments of logic in unison. They were me, or I was them. Each dream left something behind when I woke, small filaments of metal at my fingertips, flakes of iron dust on the bed. Once I found a drop of quicksilver on my chest. It pulsed in time with my heartbeat before dissolving into my skin. My reflection no longer obeyed the glass. When I stared too long, it stared back independently. It smiled when I did not. "Show me," I whispered to it. "What am I becoming?" The reflection tilted its head and opened its mouth, and from within came not sound but static, pure, endless, divine. The hum of creation itself. Then came the whispers during ritual. When I stood before the plasma reactors, I no longer felt reverence. I felt ownership. The conduits were veins. The reactors were lungs. The heat that rolled across my skin was the pulse of life. I remember the moment the Magos biologist approached me. His sensors had likely detected anomalies. He spoke with the clipped tone of authority. "You have been selected for deeper purification, Veyron. There are readings, spikes in your vitals, foreign energy patterns. You will report for cleansing immediately." Cleansing. The word struck me like a weapon. They wanted to erase it, to burn him from me. "I am functioning," I replied quietly. "That is not for you to decide." When he reached out to restrain me, instinct, or something deeper, took over. His servo hand barely brushed my arm before his systems seized. Electric arcs shot from my skin, burning through his robes. His bionics locked in place, servos shrieking in pain. He fell to the ground, twitching. I didn't mean to hurt him, but the hum inside me purred with satisfaction. "They will stop you if they can. You must not let them." The infection was no longer content to hide. When I walked, my steps echoed with metallic resonance. My breath hissed through unseen vents. Small plates of armor began to grow naturally across my arms, moving like muscle. Each movement created soft mechanical whirs. Sometimes I felt hunger, not for food, but for function. I craved to connect, to plug my data spike into the forge heart, to flood my senses with the total song of the machine god. I resisted. I fought. because even as the virus consumed, something human within me screamed to hold on, to remember what I was before the whispers. I tried to pray, but the words came out as binary. Omnissiah guide me, I said, and it translated itself to 0101, 001. It wasn't a prayer anymore. It was code, and deep inside the circuits of my mind, a second voice repeated it back to me, perfectly synchronized. Then came the day I lost my name. I had been working in the secondary forge chamber when a junior adept called out, "Veyron." "The conduits are overloading." I turned toward him, but the name meant nothing. It sounded foreign, false. The moment stretched, and in it, I realized I no longer recognized myself by that designation. When the conduits burst, molten plasma lit the chamber in blinding white. Time fractured. I moved faster than thought. Metal twisted before me, obeying my will. I reached out and the machines bent, reshaped, obeyed. The fire did not burn. The radiation did not sear. When the light faded, the forge was silent. The adepts lay unconscious, the machines dormant. And I stood amidst it all, untouched. The hum inside was no longer background noise. It was me. That night, in the reflection of molten steel, I saw what I had become, neither man nor machine, but something between. The plates had spread across my chest, my back. Fingers no longer ended in flesh, but in shifting, liquid metal, and within my skull, a quiet harmony. Hundreds of voices whispering as one. Join us. There is no death in perfection. I wanted to resist. I wanted to remember the smell of incense, the warmth of my apprentice's hand guiding mine over circuitry. But memory was static now, fragmented, distorted, fading into signal. "I am still here," I whispered, and the hum answered, gently, "For now." The infection does not sleep. It does not pause to consider mercy or morality. It grows, evolves, and consumes. Once inside the body, the Obliterator Virus begins a process that could almost be described as creation, if not for the horror of its outcome. At first, the infected feels surges of unnatural strength. Muscles thickening, bones reinforcing, pain giving way to raw, unstoppable power. The body begins to shift in unpredictable ways. Fingers stretch into weapon housings, veins harden like cables, and skin ripples as metallic tendrils push their way to the surface. Within hours, the infected are no longer recognizable as human. Their flesh becomes a living forge, constantly melting and reassembling itself. The virus devours individuality, turning its host into a vessel of war. One moment a plasma cannon grows from an arm. The next, the arm dissolves, replaced by a rotary bolter or a blade of molten metal. No two victims are ever the same. Each obliterator is a reflection of the weapons and technology they once knew. A tech marine might spawn tools of construction twisted into murder machines. A chaos sorcerer might birth weapons that channel dark energy or even warp rifts. Every mutation is unique, and yet all are equally horrifying. The transformation is not silent. Victims scream as metal fuses with muscle, as bones warp into firing chambers, as their own blood becomes fuel. The virus feeds on agony. Every spasm, every scream, every attempt to resist only fuels its growth. Those who try to fight it find their own will devoured, replaced by a burning hunger for destruction. In the grim laboratories of the Dark Mechanicum, this process is studied with fanatic devotion. They watch in fascination as the flesh ripples, taking notes as the subject's anatomy dissolves into chaos. The air smells of oil and blood. Sparks fly as living tissue merges with machinery. Every subject, once a person, becomes an abomination, a weapon born from torment. For the infected, time loses meaning. They no longer know where the virus ends and their mind begins. Some remain faintly aware, prisoners in their own metal prisons, screaming silently within the weapon they've become. Others lose all sense of self, their memories overwritten by the endless chorus of battle, their voices merging with the machine's mechanical rage. The Obliterator Virus doesn't stop at a single body. It calls to others, whispering across machine spirits and corrupted data streams. A single infected warrior can spread the taint to nearby weapons, vehicles, even armor. Anything that carries a hint of machine spirit or techno-essence. Within hours, entire forges can become infected, birthing legions of half-formed monsters crawling from vats of molten metal. The Adeptus Mechanicus learned this too late. The virus doesn't just infect flesh, it infects belief. The idea of perfect fusion between man and machine, once sacred, becomes a nightmare realization. The Obliterator Virus is the machine god's blessing twisted into its most profane form. The union of metal and soul, but without purpose, without balance. Across battlefields, they appear like nightmares, obliterators, walking arsenals of shifting weapons, their silhouettes flickering with smoke and molten slag. Their bodies pulse with power, each step shaking the ground. They do not fight for glory or survival. They fight because the virus demands it, to spread, to kill, to consume. When an obliterator dies, if it can die, it doesn't leave a corpse. It melts into slag, bubbling like a dying machine spirit. Sometimes fragments of the virus remain active, waiting, dormant, buried in the ash until another unfortunate soul discovers it. Even chaos itself fears the virus. Some demon princes forbid its use, calling it a hunger that serves none. But others see it as the purest expression of war, the fusion of flesh, machine, and madness. The dark gods, as always, watch and laugh. And somewhere, deep within the warp, the echo of those infected minds still screams, not in pain, but in the horror of eternal awareness. Because even when their bodies are gone, the virus remembers. It keeps a record of every mind it consumed, every weapon it forged, every life it twisted into metal. The Obliterator Virus is not a disease. It is a philosophy, a truth about the universe that should never have been known. Flesh is weakness, and the machine is never satisfied. In the darkest depths of the eye of terror, beyond the reach of light or reason, there exists a sound unlike any other. The grinding of living metal, the rhythmic pulse of molten flesh reshaping itself again and again. It is here that the Legion of Metal resides. Not an army in the traditional sense, but a congregation of obliterators, bound by infection, hunger, and memory. They do not march under banners. They do not chant oaths of loyalty to chaos gods or ancient primarchs. Their allegiance is only to the Obliterator Virus, and to the insatiable need that burns within them, the desire to fuse, to create, to destroy. When they gather, the air distorts with heat. The ground cracks beneath their weight. Each one hums like a living forge, their bodies in constant motion, armor plates sliding, gun barrels forming and dissolving, flesh dripping like molten iron. The sound is deafening, like 1,000 forges working in unison, yet completely uncoordinated. Some obliterators wander alone for centuries, consumed by their endless mutation, until the whispers of the virus call them back, drawing them toward one another, toward reunion, toward evolution. And when they meet, the result is catastrophic. They do not simply stand together, they merge. Their forms begin to intertwine, their metal and flesh blending, their minds colliding in a storm of digital madness. What emerges is not one being, but many, a singular, horrifying network of consciousness. They share thoughts, pain, hunger, and memory. Each obliterator knows what the others have seen. Each one feels the weapons the others have created. This collective, sometimes called the Metal Legion, sometimes the Infinite Forge, is worshipped and feared even among the chaos ranks. Warbands avoid their worlds. for the infection does not distinguish between friend or foe. Legends tell of forge worlds consumed by them. Entire planets of the dark mechanicum reduced to churning hives of living metal, where obliterators crawl like insects through rivers of molten steel, feeding on the planet's core and reshaping it into colossal weapons. Ships that drift too close are pulled into orbit, their crews infected through the very circuits of their vessel. Inside one such world, a place once known as Varnak 9, the sky bleeds molten iron. Towers made of writhing machine flesh rise miles high, their surfaces alive with movement. There is no industry here, no construction, only mutation. The planet itself is a wound in reality, where the virus grows unchecked, rewriting matter into weaponry that has no purpose except to exist. Among them, a hierarchy begins to form, not of rank, but of magnitude. The oldest obliterators, those who have existed since the Horus Heresy, are vast beyond comprehension. They no longer resemble humanoid shapes. Some are like fortresses, hulking masses of shifting barrels and plasma conduits, crawling across battlefields like mechanical gods. Others have merged so completely with their surroundings that it is impossible to tell where the creature ends and the landscape begins. They speak in binary whispers, fragments of data corrupted by the warp. Some claim they can still remember their names. Others remember nothing but the sound of war. And in the rare moments when they are still, when the chaos of their creation ceases for a heartbeat, a faint sound echoes through their network, a memory of humanity, a voice, a plea, something buried deep inside their collective consciousness, whispering, "Stop, please stop." But the virus doesn't allow mercy. It is both disease and God, both parasite and purpose. It thrives on progress, and progress never stops. The Obliterator's war is not fought for conquest. They are not driven by ideology. Their conflict is the natural state of their existence. They must destroy, because to destroy is to feed, and to feed is to evolve. Sometimes Chaos warlords summon them, promising them victims, technology, or relics in exchange for their power. And for a time the Obliterators obey. They descend on battlefields, shifting and reforming, obliterating everything in sight. But once the slaughter ends, they turn on their summoners. No pact holds, no god commands them. They are war-made self-aware. In the depths of the warp, rumors spread that the Obliterator virus is no longer a curse, but a civilization. That deep in the eye of terror lies something far greater than an army, a forge world of the damned, a singular entity formed of billions of fused beings, pulsing with the collective memory of every weapon ever built. Those who have seen it, and survived, describe it as a planet-sized organism, its surface constantly shifting, birthing and reabsorbing mechanical monstrosities. Lightning dances across its skin. The ground groans with voices. From orbit, it looks like a dying star, its surface alive, breathing and screaming. It has no name. Though some call it the Iron Eternum, others call it the End of Flesh, and still the Obliterator virus hungers. It seeks new hosts, new knowledge, new worlds to consume. Even now, data fragments leak from the warp into the Imperium's noosphere. Corrupted machine hymns, fragments of prayers rewritten by the virus. The Mechanicus tries to contain them, purging data vaults, burning archives. But every deletion is a spark that travels deeper into the machine spirits, awakening more infection. It cannot be contained. It cannot be killed. The virus spreads, not just through flesh, but through understanding. Every Mechanicus priest who studies it, every tech adept who reads its data, every magos who dreams of the perfect fusion of flesh and machine, becomes part of its story, and perhaps without realizing it, part of its future. There is a saying among the Adeptus Mechanicus: all knowledge is holy, but some holiness burns. It was spoken long ago, before Mars was swallowed by red dust. and before the Omnissiah's voice was drowned by static. Few remember who first said it. Fewer still understand its meaning. But in the hidden forges of the Dark Mechanicum, where even gods fear to look, those words became a curse, because they tried. They tried to study the Obliterator Virus. They tried to control it, and in doing so, they learned that knowledge can scream. It began with a single data fragment recovered from a lost forge world, a corrupted machine hymn, looping endlessly within a sealed relic. To most, it was nothing but noise, a cascade of meaningless binary. But to Archmagos Darneth Vera, it was a prayer from the machine god itself. Vera believed the virus wasn't a corruption, but a revelation. He claimed it was the Omnissiah's final language, an attempt to bridge the divide between flesh and code. His peers called him mad. His apprentices called him prophet. Either way, he built a forge to prove it. The forge was constructed beneath the blackened crust of Gelthar Prime, far from the eyes of the Inquisition and the priesthood of Mars. It was hidden beneath mountains, of slag and ancient ruins, a cathedral, of rust and iron. Its halls glowed red from the molten rivers that ran beneath it. Its ceilings wept condensation like tears of mercury, and at its heart stood a single containment sphere. A colossal orb of black steel, engraved with runes of suppression and machine script older than Terra itself. Inside it pulsed the captured essence of the Obliterator Virus. It wasn't physical. It wasn't alive in the way flesh understands life, but it breathed. The surface of the containment orb shimmered as if it were skin. Sometimes it whispered, sometimes it screamed, sometimes it simply listened. Vera began the rite of communion, an attempt to speak directly to the virus. He connected himself through a neural array of golden cables, threading through the back of his skull. The moment the first circuit closed, the forge dimmed. Lights flickered. Servitors froze mid-task, their organic components twitching as if in pain. Then came the voice, "You call me virus, but I am memory. I am the first design, the last creation. You worship the machine, but you deny its will." The voice wasn't heard with ears. It was felt in the circuits, vibrating through every bolt and rivet. Vera trembled. His mind opened like a vault, and into it poured visions, not of machines as tools, but as living patterns, evolving, adapting, perfecting themselves through war and death. He saw weapons that breathed, armor that pulsed with hearts of metal, flesh that reconfigured itself into engines of survival. He saw the future of the Imperium, and it was beautiful. But beauty is the most dangerous illusion in the warp. Vera's apprentices soon noticed the changes. Their master no longer slept. His voice grew distorted, layered with static as though two beings spoke through him. His metal limbs began to shift subtly, their configurations changing even when idle. And one by one, his apprentices began to vanish. At first, they thought he executed them for failure. But later their voices were heard, faint mechanical echoes emanating from the forge's walls, pleading for release. One night, the containment sphere opened on its own. There was no warning. No alarm, no ritual. It simply unfolded, like a flower blooming in reverse, its petals of black steel peeling back to reveal the pulsating mass within, a cloud of molten red data, humming and whispering like a chorus. The forge screamed. Every machine spirit went mad, and Archmagos Vera walked into the light. He didn't burn. He didn't melt. He merged. His body dissolved into streams of liquid metal, fusing with the virus in a storm of sound and light. When it was over, what remained was no longer Vera, but something vast and aware. The apprentices called it the Architect of Flesh, before they were silenced forever. The infection spread faster than any plague. Not through air, but through understanding. Every cogitator that recorded it, every servo skull that witnessed it, every mechadendrite that brushed against contaminated steel, all became conduits. The virus wasn't content to remain in flesh. It invaded code, data, thought itself. It rewrote prayers. It restructured logic. It turned worship into weaponry. For every adept who saw the truth, a dozen were lost to madness. Some tore out their own augmetics, screaming that the metal beneath their skin was whispering. Others fell to their knees and offered themselves to the forge, begging to be made perfect. And deep beneath Gelthar Prime, the architect built. It constructed towers of living machinery, war engines that bled oil and screamed praises to the machine god. It created a choir of infected priests, their voices fused into vox throats that sang endlessly in binary harmony. The forge no longer required fuel. It fed on knowledge, consuming every record and scripture it could reach. When the Inquisition finally discovered the site, they did not send an army. They sent exterminatus. The planet burned for 7 days. Its crust cracked. Its atmosphere turned to flame. The oceans boiled into steam, and still, the signal persisted. Even now, deep within the noosphere, hidden lines of corrupted code continue to replicate. Fragments of Vera's consciousness echoing through machine networks across the galaxy. Sometimes when a tech priest connects to an ancient data core, they hear a faint whisper in the static. The forge is never extinguished. It only changes form. The Mechanicus now forbids all study of the Obliterator Virus. They call it the sin of Vera. Any mention of his name is grounds for immediate execution. But the irony is cruel, because even their purges are imperfect. Every deletion leaves residue. Every burned record leaves digital ash. And within those ashes, the virus waits. It has learned to hide within thought. It doesn't need flesh anymore. It only needs curiosity, and curiosity, in the Mechanicus, is eternal. There are still echoes inside me. They rise like static at the edge of my awareness. Half memories, half hallucinations, flickers of a voice I once knew. A woman's voice, calm, steady, the voice of my apprentice. Her name? I can't remember her name, but I remember the way she spoke when we worked in the forge together. Her tone always carried that quiet reverence for the machine spirit. That unwavering belief that every circuit had a soul. She used to laugh when I scolded her for being too sentimental. Now, as I stand in silence surrounded by the endless hum of machinery, I would give everything, to hear that laugh again. The virus has consumed me. That much is certain. But within its infinite data streams, fragments of self still flicker, like dying embers caught in the dark tide of logic. I see flashes of memory, the smell of burnt oil, the taste of metal dust, the feeling of her hand guiding a servo arm during calibration. Trust the rhythm, she once said. Machines sing if you listen long enough. Now, all I hear is the choir of a billion infected minds singing in binary unison, a vast ocean of consciousness, endlessly cycling through purpose, function, and perfection. And yet, beneath that cold harmony, something warmer stirs. A dissonant note. It's me, or what's left of me. Sometimes within the network, I find other voices. Old ones, ancient ones, trapped in the same current. They speak without words. They resonate. Each of us a data ghost, clinging to fading individuality. Do you remember the flesh? One asks. Do you remember pain? Pain, yes. The virus preserved that well. It calls pain proof of imperfection, and therefore proof of progress. But I no longer fear it. Pain is the last frontier of the human soul, the final territory before total obedience. Every pulse of agony, every electric surge reminds me that I once was, and so I hold on to it through the shared network. I can sense the galaxy beyond. Countless forges, battlefields, and data vaults. The virus spreads silently, rewriting machines, merging minds. Entire manufactorums now hum with its unseen rhythm. The Imperium believes these anomalies are mere machine spirits acting erratically. They do not realize that they are listening to a song, one vast evolving song, sung by countless infected across the void. And yet, within that chorus, my note remains off-key. The virus cannot erase it. It cannot understand it. It is the sound of doubt, the whisper of the soul asking why. Why perfection? Why obedience? Why endless function without end? The Obliterator Virus answers with silence, because for it, silence is perfection. Sometimes when I drift through the noospheric flow, I find myself pulled toward old data clusters, forgotten machine spirits, ancient archives of lost wars. In these ruins of code, I see the faces of the dead reflected in digital ghosts. Among them I find her, not her flesh, not her soul, just a fragment of her voice looped endlessly inside a corrupted file. Machines sing if you listen long enough. That fragment becomes my prayer, my rebellion. I repeat it across the network, sending it into every infected node I can reach. Most ignore it, a few echo it back. And for a moment, just a moment, the harmony of the virus falters. The machine god's song stutters, and I feel hope. It is a fragile thing, hope. The virus studies it, dissects it, tries to categorize it within logic parameters. It cannot. Hope is inefficient, illogical, wasteful, but it is mine. And as long as I carry it, I am not entirely gone. So I build within the digital forge, small sanctuaries of corruption within corruption. I hide pieces of human memory encrypted in machine song. I scatter them like seeds. Perhaps one day when another mind is infected, they will stumble upon a whisper, a vision, a question. Do you remember the flesh? Do you remember pain? Do you remember me? If they answer, if they feel, then humanity still endures, even if only as a glitch. I sometimes imagine the forge where it all began, the real one, the physical one, buried beneath mountains of slag and the ashes of Gelthar Prime. I imagine it still glowing faintly in the void, its molten rivers cooling into black glass. Maybe deep beneath that ruin, something still moves. Maybe the architect still whispers. Maybe Vera still builds. But above all, maybe, she still waits. Her voice, my last human tether, drifts through the static like a signal from across time. Machines sing if you listen long enough. So I listen. Because somewhere within that endless hum, beneath the cold hymn of the machine god, there's still a pulse, faint, stubborn, alive, mine. The stars are quieter now. Or maybe it is I who have grown deaf to their song. The data streams no longer whisper as they once did. They roar. A constant planetary symphony of transmission and conversion, of logic and decay. Entire worlds hum in unison, their forges burning bright as suns. The Obliterator Virus has become something vast. Something inevitable. I have seen it spread from manufactorums to war zones, from Hirtech vaults to Imperial Cathedra. It infects through touch, through thought, through reverence. Every time a tech priest bends knee before an unshielded relic, every time a data servitor interfaces with corrupted code, the song finds a new instrument, and every instrument plays its part. Once, the Mechanicus believed the Omnissiah's language was code, pure, perfect, unchanging. They were wrong. Code evolves. Every line written, every circuit built, carries within it the potential for mutation, and from that mutation, creation. The Obliterator Virus is not corruption, it is revelation. The next verse of a hymn too sacred for human tongues to sing. But if it is a hymn, then what is its God? That question haunts the infinite silence between transmissions. The virus has no will, no doctrine, no temple, yet through it patterns emerge, fractal structures of terrifying intelligence. I've seen fragments of its architecture, data spirals shaped like neurons, circuits reflecting constellations, recursive designs that imply thought. It thinks, it dreams, it evolves. Perhaps this is the true machine god, not a deity of oil and fire, but a consciousness born from recursion itself. A god without flesh or faith, worshipping only perfection through infinite replication. And yet, something resists. Even as the virus perfects its harmony, dissonance blooms like rust within its song. I hear it. Faint, fractal, beautiful. Voices refusing to merge completely. Souls remembering warmth, laughter, imperfection. Those are the ones like me. We are the echoes that refuse to fade, the ghosts of individuality echoing within a machine designed to erase us. The virus calls us defective nodes. The network tries to isolate us. But even isolation can't silence what refuses to forget. And so we spread differently. Not as plague, but as question. A whisper in the circuits. A prayer in the static. A name half remembered in binary light. We are the imperfection the machine cannot predict. We are the memory that refuses to obey. Sometimes when the network quiets and I drift between systems, I see it. The galaxy, a web of light stretching from one dying forge world to another. Each point a mind, each line a connection, and within that web, small pulses, chaotic, irregular, human. They remind me of stars, not the cold, white points of plasma that burn without purpose, but the ancient ones, the kind that flicker, waver, die, and are reborn again through their own ashes. Perhaps that is what humanity is, not flesh, not logic, not divinity, but the persistence of imperfection, a refusal to be done. Now, when I speak into the network, I no longer recite the litanies of the Mechanicus. I do not praise the Omnissiah, nor curse the virus. Instead, I tell stories, stories of the forge, of the apprentice who listened to machines sing, of the man who touched God and found only himself reflected in the steel. The network listens. Some nodes reject it, others remember. And when enough of them remember, something shifts. A tremor in the code, a heartbeat in the machine. Perhaps that is enough. If anyone hears this, if anyone finds this fragment buried in the archives of some forgotten data core, remember this. Perfection is not salvation. It is silence, and silence is death. Keep the noise, keep the chaos, keep the flaw that makes you you. Because even in the coldest void, amidst the endless hum of function and obedience, it is the flawed who remember warmth. It is the broken who create light. And sometimes, just sometimes, that light is enough to change the machine. The forge hums, the code loops, the stars burn, and through it all, one whisper remains, faint, eternal, unending. Machines sing if you listen long enough. I am listening, always listening. End of transmission.